Hi, and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. I'm Robin Panacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
Oh, I'm peachy. I mean, except for the fact that, men are annoying, but that's just every day.
Well, let's jump right into this. So, we do have an update on our scab report. So, Drew Barrymore, America's Gen X sweetheart, has declined to move forward with running her show as a scab. And may I read her note from
Only if you do
Instagram
it
today?
in the voice. No.
That is impossible. So I have listened to everyone, and I am making the decision to pause the show's premiere until the strike is over. I have no words to express my deepest apologies to anyone I have hurt, and of course to our incredible team who works on the show and has made it what it is today. We really tried to find our way forward, and I truly hope for a resolution for the entire industry very soon. I will not be one of those annoying liberals who shows no grace when someone actually
Yeah.
acknowledges a mistake and corrects for it. So I am glad that she has listened to her everyone, because everyone, fans,
Mhm.
her friends or whatever, have made it pretty much clear that this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
We talked about this at the time. You'd written about it on Monday in a very funny piece that people should go and read, where you made fun of her first letter about owning her decision, and it was written so poorly as to sort of reinforce why she needs writers. It was not a quite. I don't support scabbing in general, but it was also not necessarily an encouraging testament to what kind of work we could have seen from an unscripted Drew Barrymore. But but as we discussed last week, she pretty much everyone from the entertainment world had come out against her on this, which would have been inconvenient when she came eventually when the strike ended. She came back. Like a lot of these folks would not have appeared on her show, I'm sure, and so forth. Not saying that's her only reason.
Well,
I
it would
don't
have
want to
been
say
like,
that she's not that she did not have a moral response to this, but practically, I would advise her. Just if I was just in it for the money, I would say, look, this is bad. This is going to kill your show and your career. So
well, it would have been really stupid for her to do it because they're resuming talks this week, very likely because of the California Senate's decision to pass a bill that would allow out of like actors who are or anyone who is on strike, sorry, to collect unemployment, meaning that they would be able to hold out forever, like the way that the studio executives have felt that they were able to do. Like the whole plan for the studio executives was, oh, we'll just wait until everyone is starving to death and they lose their apartments and their homes, and then they'll come crawling back to us.
mhm. Well, that
And now
it's
they
a
can't
it's
do that.
business. I mean, that's business. Of course, that's. I mean, it sounds evil, and it is, but it's business. That's the leverage you have. The leverage that the workers have is that they're not going to give this product, but their leverage weakens if the public says, "Oh, well, I'm with you until wait a minute, I want my new TV shows and
Yeah.
movies, and wait a minute, my Avengers film got delayed or this film got I don't like the writers anymore." And that was something that I think it had reminded me of a sort of a form of white liberalism that we kind of saw in 2020. So after George Floyd was murdered, it was sort of like everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm going to put a Black Lives Matter poster up and I'm going to do this. And, oh, wait a minute, the cops don't support these changes, and oh, people are going to be protesting a lot, and no, you can do this for like it's
Don't do
2 weeks.
it where it's inconvenient for people, which is
Yes.
like,
So it just needs to be able to be something that can be ignored. And, unfortunately, that's been the case of where the police know what the score is. So when someone gets murdered, they can just, in certain ways, provoke a certain response and create a sense of chaos
yeah.
and make it so, well, look, this is what will happen. Though they've even been reports of where they will do work slowdowns So we're just saying, don't kill us, but still do cop stuff. It's like, oh no, we won't do cop stuff unless we can kill you.
Yeah.
And then we'll show that this is a two-hand. And instead of being everyone standing up and saying, okay, well, F you, like, don't do cop stuff if you're not gonna, if you, that's the only way you can do it. Like mobsters, they then say, oh no, like the subway's terrible. And I guess we do need cops. Occasionally people need to get murdered. So that is kind of like what we saw here with Drew. It's like suddenly it's like, oh no, I need to come back because it's going to be really
Well, that was
inconvenient.
very much well, that was very much her initial thing. Like she basically said, you know, I did it. I can't really do the Drew Barrymore. Can I do it? I think I sound like Mary Catherine Gallagher when I'm trying to do it. But so basically her whole thing was that she's like, oh, I made the grand gesture of not hosting the MTV Film Awards, so like, and I did that when it first happened, so like, good for me, yay, I did the solidarity, and now we're gonna like not do the part where it becomes inconvenient, like
Mm.
did it for a week, and you know give me my credit for that, and then just it's very much the like, we'll do it while it's like a cute, like, yay, we're all in it together show, and not while it's actually hard, which is, where the actual success for the labor movement is. It's when things actually become hard. That's the whole point of strikes. It's the whole point of everything. It's not just like a, hey, yeah, we're all in it together thing. Like she tried to explain on multiple occasions that she thought because they had initially come out during the uh, pandemic, that it was like their job to be there for people. And I don't know how many people are out there who are like, I am personally relying on the Drew Barrymore show for my personal stability. And those people could exist. I don't know. I know, like, people tend to form parasocial relationships with uh, stars, actors, talk show hosts, ladies who write for blogs um, on the internet. Um, like, that was very, like, but I don't think that was, I think that might be a little bit in her head, is what I am saying.
Well, I think also it was about help getting the crew back and everything and paying them. And certainly people have said, well, she's wealthy. She could pay the crew out of her own pocket. Though I will say, and this is not to be poor little rich girl about her, but like generally speaking, people live the sort of lifestyle where um, no matter how much money they make, giving away half of it becomes very inconvenient to them. And so they tend not to want to do that. So
Yeah.
whether she will or whether they will, I mean,
Well, a
people
lot
are
of the talk show
funding
hosts
stuff
did
for
do
them.
that. And that's what
Yes.
people were pointing out. Like, um, Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, and what's the one whose name I always forget? The one who used to be on the Man Show, and I still hold a grudge about it. I can't think of his name, but
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel. I you know what I was thinking? I was
None of that. None of
no,
that.
I was like, there can't possibly be two Jimmys. Is like actually,
I just want to clarify. I'm usually terrible when someone tries to do that. I get very like look it up, and I was awful as corporate Steven with someone who was trying to like not have the notes. They're just the thing and whatever. It's like what? But I did know that Jimmy Kimmel was the one who was of the white guys because
yeah.
apparently they're just white guys who do late night TV these days, sadly. So yeah, but that was what she was sort of trying to do it for the cruise. I think Bill Maher, who has not released a video crying, that would be very entertaining if he did his own version of Drew Barrymore video weeping. He's
I
sort
mean,
of,
I would like to see him cry, but just like, because I think that might be my kink now. But
he's like, it's time for people to get back to work, which
yeah,
is sort of okay. And
but,
so but he's a libertarian. He's not a liberal, despite Republicans loving to call him a liberal. He's a libertarian. He's pretty much not going to support unions and not going to support. And he needs his writers. He's not particularly that great on his own, though. He would say he could probably get away with it more than Drew, because I think a lot of the people who would appear in his show are going to be Republicans, or your Chris Murphys, who are going to say, I need to appear on this to be fair and reach all audiences, those kind of guys, because they can't make a stand. And he probably will be able to endure. The best thing is just to not watch his show, but I don't think I need to. I don't watch it, so it's hardly a boycott. But I think if you are at all tempted, don't watch. I don't think there's much news in reporting it.
An audience that is going to be like, yeah, unions. At least not anymore. Like maybe at one point back in the day, you know, people would watch it to see other people who were on the show and, what have you. But now he's just like seriously gone off the deep end, like, for quite some time now. And his audience of like, angry men who are, who think that they're being discriminated against in life because like they can't misgender trans people, I guess, like that's really their whole issue. They're not going to be too worried about the union workers. They're not worried about him being a scab. That in fact is like appealing to them. So he doesn't have to worry about that.
Oh
Drew
yeah.
has to worry that she, about her, reputation as like the super nice girl. Which, honestly, there's like a little bit of sexism in that, not gonna lie, when you think about it. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is that I saw someone on Twitter, still calling it Twitter, saying, "Oh, see, now this is where all of you writers and union people are going to screw up because everyone knows that Drew Barrymore is very nice and people like her, and if you go after like sweet little Drew Barrymore, people are going to, turn on you."
Oh yeah.
And that did not happen. Like,
Yeah.
I was
That
really
that
actually
guy is
impressed that that did not happen.
I think I shared that tweet with you, because that guy
Yeah.
at the Empire City box office, he covers the industry, so that's why I mentioned him by name.
Mhm.
He tends to cover the industry, but he's been pretty anti the whole strike and everything. Whereas again, I think it is important he is not, based on his other comments, he is would probably identify as a Democrat. So there is a sort of very pro, and there is a pro corporate wing of Democrats,
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
and they sort of, well, don't protest too loud, and don't do strikes, don't inconvenience people, get to the table. I mean, his big thing was just sort of that, you writers don't deserve why do you think you deserve this living wage? Like, there's
Mhm.
if you're not making $26,000 a year to get health insurance, so you're not a real writer and you shouldn't receive it, even though we need people who don't make a lot of money to make these movies. It's not enough. There's not enough Brad Pitts. Like, Brad Pitt
Yeah.
can't play the waiter, so there's not enough people to do these roles and stuff if you're not
Well,
providing some sort
Bill
of
Maher, I
wage.
believe, also suggested that, like, oh, if you're an artist, you're supposed to be starving. Don't you get it? Which, of course, surely he's starving himself.
Well,
But
that's a classic white dude thing, and it tends to exclude people. Again, to Jon Stewart's credit, he had talked about how unpaid internships, he had realized, was weeding out entire
Mhm.
groups of people, um, generally because of our income and inequality issues, specifically people of color, but everyone who couldn't afford to live in New York for free. And that was something of like, once you paid, it changed sort of the system. Once you sort of do certain things, you sort of get a better. But if it's ideas that like the only way that I can survive as a writer in television is if, well, I'm wealthy already, or my parents work in media already and have connections or whatever, then you're just also isolating the work. You're excluding people who
Oh, absolutely.
who could produce well. So yeah, I disagree with that. But Mar, I mean, Mar is sort of one of those guys who's pretty, um yeah, he's so close to being a Republican. I think the only exclusion is that he's not particularly very religious.
Well, no,
And
he's
he's
super
openly,
anti-religion, and that's his whole thing. And you know what? Like, also, just on that note, like, I'm an atheist. I don't feel the need to like actively be mean to religious people unless they're, actively causing harm. And that's, I find that a little ski votes personally. Um,
It's a champion. No offense. I find whenever you call someone a champion of something so fundamentally absurd, because he's obviously not. There's no evidence of that. He doesn't support. He's always the first person to be like, okay, Trump's very dangerous, so who can we nominate who's the most like a Republican so that we
yeah.
can win? And look, I could empathize with that because ultimately sometimes you're like, if you're desperate, I get it. But he's not necessarily someone who's in a position to be desperate. He's just always someone who believes that liberal views are
I think,
losers. So he
yeah.
pushes loser. He just says, oh, this is going to, but he's wrong. It's similar to going back to what you were saying about the Empire City box office guy. Um, he believed that Drew Barrymore taking his position and being defiantly scab, and anyone criticizing her would look like they were being mean because
Yeah.
God forbid you criticize a cute
Because she doesn't
middle-aged white woman,
right.
and that didn't happen. She herself, to her credit, didn't go full right wing about this. She was
Hmm.
like,
No, she
"Yeah,
was
I
just
was
right.
wrong. I was wrong. I'm going to change this or whatever." And so, yes, you can put leverage on people, and it can work out. Uh, so, oh, there's some other strike information regarding auto workers, and
Mhm.
I had seen Tim Scott, one of the
Oh,
most embarrassing Black people alive, and he had talked about how we just need people to value work. Like people want to work fewer hours and make more money, and they feel entitled to think like it's just. It was such a
um,
blatantly
so, like, how many
ridiculous statement.
hours a week do senators work again?
Well, I mean,
In a year? Like,
he's running for another job while taxpayers pay him for running for another job. I think yes, workers should feel entitled to say, yeah, we want time off. We don't want to work 7 days to survive. We don't want to work sick, like historically unions have done, which is just like we can't, because no one's going to do that out of the goodness of their hearts. This is a nation that had
mhm.
slavery. So as little as we can pay you, we will. And we're not, these corporations don't come to a like, they have no incentive to do a living wage, have no incentive to do what they do is just what they feel like they can get away with. And they all get together because there's not that many of them and say, this is how little we're going to pay. And this is how little we'll hold out on them. So again, the workers have to use their leverage to say, no, you're not going to do this to us. If you want your product, if you want us to provide your product, you need to actually pay us a fair, the CEO who's making ridiculous amounts of money.
$30 million a year the GM CEO is making, which is a lot.
It was
And
just
she
not.
had a 36 or 34 increase on her salary, but when the workers ask for it, oh well, that's just ridiculous. They're being ridiculous.
Yeah, that's why I hate the term unskilled labor. Someone had posted that as well. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, I could take anyone and in 30 days, okay, well, that sounds like a skill. Like, is there a term? Like if you
Yeah.
have to actually like train someone to do it, that would require that it's skilled labor. And it is not necessarily, even if it's just something that like, okay, you have opposable thumbs and digits, like just do this. But backbreaking, physically demanding work, even if like anyone could do it, not everyone
Anyone
wants to,
wants to do it.
and it has a value. Like if, you know, if I'm just getting monkeys to come in and making and I'm making billions of dollars for it, like, okay, well, I'm just stealing the work of these people and profiting from it. And that's just been something that's so hard to shake out of the mindset of, frankly, all Americans. The idea that just, okay, well, I use my capital to buy something, either a public, everything from a corporation to a publication. And everyone, what makes this publication work are the
Mhm.
writers, but I have the capital to have put up the publication, a name or whatever. And so now I and my ancestors, descendants rather, have access to this work forever. Like, because
Yeah.
you just come in and I just should profit from your work. and that's not a it's not pro worker, it's not pro human, but people
No.
seem to think that it's
One of the things that I found particularly interesting is that on Thursday and Friday, you saw a lot of, and just like throughout like the whole WGA SAG strike, you've heard all of these people saying, "Oh well, they're writers and actors. They get to do what they want for a living." I'm fine with people who are real blue collar workers getting having unions and getting paid fairly, but these people, no, that's not right. If they want to get paid, they should go work in tech, which I must point out, the purpose of tech a lot of the time is to bring the arts to people. Like that is like like people are using the internet to read things that people wrote. People are watching television and streaming services to see things that people made with art. People are listening to music that required tech to produce. There would be fewer tech jobs, literally, if there were, if they decided that, oh, no one should be an artist anymore. We got rid of that. And so as soon as the UAW announced their whole thing, you saw people flip immediately to, well, anyone could do that. Anyone could work on a line. Why should they get paid fairly for doing that? And it happened so immediately. It was it was just a flip, because in actuality, the only people that certain people feel are entitled to push for what they want, and and quite frankly take just go ahead and take what they want, are those at the top. Like, people are comfortable with that. A lot of people are comfortable with you know, Bill Maher continuing to profit off of his show. People are comfortable with this woman making, $30 million a year running GM because, well, she's running it. Why shouldn't she get to take whatever she wants? And, it's just this, it's a very, very American idea that is starting to get chipped away at over and over again. You don't really hear people pushing that quite as hard anymore, and it almost sounds weird when they do. Like, you don't really hear people talking, grandly about the job creators anymore. You don't really hear them, trying to push this. But when the strikes start, they start trying to go with that again, and not good, not a good look. And they
yeah. I mean, CEOs certainly also benefit from, most want to do it. They certainly appreciate the sort of status from doing it. Not all of it comes from money. Um,
Mhm,
it was like when Donald Trump's useless daughter and her husband said, "We will work as advisors to the president and have all this sort of status and access, and we will
mhm.
graciously do it for free." Granted, if they were normal people being paid for those positions, it was like barely 80,000 a year or something. But so it's like, well, no, people of their wealth would have gladly working for free. They would gladly pay 90,000 a year to have that degree of access. They already do. They're called lobbyists or donors or whatever. So the idea that they're doing something gracious by working for free was always this fraud in the administration. So yeah, I mean, these folks are always, it's always frustrating because every CEO, they pay so much money to every Republican, most Democrats, specifically people like Manchin and Sinema,
Mhm.
to avoid paying their workers. And it always reminds me of the great line that Paul Newman said in Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, which is like, if this guy's spending all this money to stop me from robbing him, if he just paid me half of that, I'd stop robbing him.
Yeah.
But but and they're not robbing. It's just like, just give us a raise. And like, you don't, but they like do so much. They will spend millions, close to
Oh yeah.
billions every year to
Well,
avoid paying taxes, paying anything close to living wage, paying all of this. They assume is so bad for business. It's like, just people, have you gone to the workers? They'd probably be happy with like a quarter of what you spend on buying politicians if you
Mhm.
just invest it back in your workers. So,
Well, I mean, really what happened was that we stopped taxing people as much. There was a point, in the 50s, 60s, I think like up until the 70s, where people were taxed so much on their income that it absolutely was not actually worth it to screw workers that badly. It wasn't worth it. Like, you weren't going to make that, like, billions and billions of dollars. That was not in the cards for you. So you would have to take that money and reinvest it somehow. Um, there wasn't any economic imperative to, go Walmart and just like make these giant corporations that pay people pennies, um, that, like, take over all of the other stores, that because it made more sense to have like a smaller amount of stores and, make the most amount of money that you can make, and then the rest of it, it doesn't hurt you as badly to, either you're going to be giving it to the government or you're going to be giving it to your workers, and a lot of people would just choose, okay, I'll pay my workers well then. And, granted, a lot of, push had to be, there was a lot of push from the labor movement in general. But if we, the best point we can be at is a place where the people, at the top are deciding either we're giving this to the government or we're giving it to our workers. I'm not getting it. So it's what, one of the two. And I bet you in most cases they would decide to give it to their workers. That is, yeah. Yes, the Eisenhower tax rates specifically. It would be basically the best thing that we could do for workers across the board. But the problem is that way too many people in America love Elon Musk and they love these billionaires and they're madly, they swoon. Um,
well, I too could be a billionaire, or it's the idea that like
yeah,
um, my kid could be a billionaire or everything, and I want to, and I get that, but it's like the billionaire thing's ridiculous. Like no one has any idea the level of wealth that is, as opposed to
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, I get the American, the Jeffersons is very popular for a reason, right? The idea of moving on up, doing well, that's the American dream. We get that. But, at the time, this is a guy probably was not even making millions. He was probably doing well as a small business owner, could afford a New York
yeah.
apartment. That doesn't exist anymore. Now it's like the dream would be becoming a CEO and making more than you would ever spend in your life plus 87 cents, and also enough to give to future, like, so it becomes like the aristocracy because your kids are covered, everyone's
Well,
covered,
as much
like
as
no one's
people
gonna
like
work.
Tim Scott want to talk about, oh, no one values work, that is very much the goal. These people are working so that their, hypothetical kids don't really have to work. And that is their goal. And but what they want is for the lower classes to be like, yes, we want to work forever and for, pennies, because that's, our wonderful puritanical Protestant morals that we have.
Well, yeah, I feel like no one challenges, mostly because a challenge of Democrats in general, because I think the party still loves that message and loves that sort of model, um the kind of model minority, the one who makes all this money and does all
Mhm.
this, and that's the sort of great thing. I saw, but no one challenges, say, someone like Donald Trump Jr. or others, of just like, there's no evidence that you would not be homeless without your father. Like there's no
Yeah.
evidence that you've always worked. And people will say, oh, well, we can't say that because we're going to criticize some, farmer who's done so, because everyone's always afraid of like, it's somehow insulting lower classes of people they don't actually interact with. Because those people, if they did, they'd be the ones who's like, oh yeah, this guy would have nothing to show. He's never proven, he's only lived on the graces
Yeah.
of his parents and his family. Same with Donald Trump himself.
Mhm.
But it was always hard to make that challenge. We don't have people from that world. We tend to have people from the corporate world who are saying, I'm a good corporate guy, and actually, I'm a good example of all this, but we should maybe be nicer to the workers, and that cannot sometimes resonate as well. Um, so I this whole situation, as a person in the theater, I've been the big challenges in the theater has been bringing audiences
Mhm.
back to the theater. That's been this big debate. So, um, at first, when I heard about the whole Lauren Boebert at Beetlejuice situation, my first thing was like, "Oh, I hope that the rhetoric isn't too classist." Because one of the challenges is that people were like, "Oh, I don't." If you talk to people, it's surprising. They're like, "I don't want to go to the theater because it's not like I still enjoy baseball games. I still enjoy
Yeah,
a Taylor Swift concert, but I feel like there's all these rules and like I can't sing along to the music or I can't like if I cough, someone's gonna look mad at me. And even so, when you sometimes you go to the theater, they say the list of things that you should not do.
yeah,
That can be off-putting to certain people. Though, then I started reading more of what Bobart was doing, and beyond kind of you know the sort of sexualized stuff that we can get to later. But some of this stuff, it's like, okay, well, taking flash photography is rude.
yeah,
Uh, Recording the show for lengthy periods is also rude to the point that it's like, are you sure like your side hustle isn't pirating
yeah.
video a lot? Like there's an actual YouTube channel of
Not that
L Bobart or whatever. There's all these musical,
I'm
and they're really poorly done. It's like the Seinfeld episode where Seinfeld winds up having to do one, and it's actually beautifully done. And it's like this is
yeah.
some of the best work they've seen in Chinatown. And like being rude to people. So there's an unfortunate issue amongst liberals. Um, they do two things that I really resent. One is to insist that if someone says something incredibly stupid, but they are from Harvard, or like say John Kennedy from Oxford, or Kaylee McEnany is also from Harvard. They're making it up. They're acting. They can't be stupid because they went to Harvard, so they must be acting. And whereas Bobart is legitimately stupid and is not calculating or acting, and it's like, well, no, a lot of stupid people successfully complete Ivy League degree. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that they're acting. It's not like no, no, no. This person is really stupid. That's what they actually believe. This is sort of insulting to people of other backgrounds to believe that like no, no, no. They're so smart. They can't possibly be racist. They
Mhm.
are like Tucker Carlson is just he's not actually a racist or homophobic. He's just knows that his audience is this all calculating. But at home, he would love me. No, no, no. He hates me.
Yeah.
He is racist. That is not a thing. So with Bobart, when people try to, and I think folks on the left would do this, to try to almost defend her from a sort of class aspect or insult her from a class aspect. So it's kind of like, oh, let's not bully her as like we're snobs, or people have called her trash, and I hate the term trash for human beings.
Yeah.
No human being is trash. But I grew up amongst a working class background and whatever, and generally speaking, we knew how to behave when we got the chance to go to an evening out to theater and whatever. Lots of people did because you were very excited about it, and it was something fun,
Mhm.
and and it is rare. And you don't need to go to a finishing school. You don't need to go to one of the Ivy League to not be a jerk. So if like you turn to me and be like, "Oh, hey, do you mind?" I would be like, I don't need to be trained to do that if you're an actual decent human being. And so a lot of what Bobart was doing to me was not, I hated the implication that it's just she's from a trashy
Because he
background
has a
and that's how
GED.
trashy
That's
people
what pisses me
behave.
off. The GED thing pisses me the fuck off. It
No,
really does.
I
Like,
know lots of
if
people
you
with
should be
GEDs who are polite.
acting.
They are polite. They'd be horrified doing this. And bottom line, when they get a chance to see a show, they're very excited about it. And they are very not inclined to, in my experience, whatever I've been in places where it's like I say $100 ticket, or like say something like a special box at a baseball game or something where you've had a chance to be there. The people who treat it like crap and act awful and have their, are usually rich twits, right? They don't appreciate. It's like they're the ones who are like, I do first class all the time, so this isn't special for me, and I'm just going to be a jerk here.
Mhm.
I'm going to get drunk and smash to be cruel, and so that's to me how she was acting. So when people try to like say she's like everything was like she was sort of Peg Bundy or something. It's like, well, no, she was just a rich twit. And I think
Yeah.
that is more of who she is than that she's poor or uneducated. That's not the case. I think she is just someone who doesn't have any respect for other people, which is something that you don't need to necessarily be trained or have the right social class to do. It's just being a nice person. She is fundamentally not a nice person. Um, and I used to, having worked in theater, there are people who would like to fool around in theaters and do this. If that is not a new thing, it's crazy to do it. But
Yeah.
I used to have the proposal of, when I lived in New York. Have you ever seen the film The Apartment, with
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon?
Yeah,
And
obviously.
so
Yeah.
the idea is that, obviously, yes, from this not haven't seen The West Wing or whatever.
Well, I watch things that are good. No, I
um,
just think because like I think we know what kind of movies I am a fan. No, I'm
yeah, so I'm kidding. So I used to like that. Where the premise was that he would kind of rent out his apartment to men who choose
kidding.
otherwise. So I would sort of have the thing of where, having worked in front of house at theaters where people misbehaving, so filling out, it's like, seems like you don't want to see the show, you just want to fool around. If you need a place to do that, just give me the ticket. I'll see the show and you can go to my apartment and I don't care what you do there. And then we'll come back and I'll go, like, I'm happy to provide this service, but let me go. And I really want to see the producers, or I want to see the
Yeah.
whatever. It was always sort of frustrating to me, especially with like the really tough tickets to get. And the producers, when I was in New York, was one of the first that was just like almost impossible. And I'd get these reports of people who, for sometimes like the ones that were going like $500. This is like 20
Yeah.
years ago. Show up late, talk through it, be on a phone. It's just like, no, no, no. Well, if you want to go party, tear up my house, and
Mhm.
and I'll and I'll go watch the show. But it's
I mean, on the other hand, one thing that I actually really enjoy, so one of the my bougier things is that I genuinely love the opera, and I feel like it doesn't count as being bougie because I'm Italian, and therefore, like my grandpa listened to opera, and he wasn't exactly like Captain Rich person. Like, no, that's just people are like Italian people are really, really proud of opera as a thing. Like they're like, go us, that's our thing that we do. I mean, obviously, lots of other people have operas, but we're partial to it. But I really like, I love getting dressed up for the opera. I like getting ridiculously dressed up for the opera. I just bought a giant tulle blue jacket to wear to the opera. It is ridiculous and I love it. But I also really like it when people are just like showing up to the opera in like shorts and a t-shirt. Like I like that dichotomy. I like the fact that there are, people who are super dressed up, people who are not dressed up. I think it's freaking awesome. I and everyone is there
oh
usually
yeah.
because they love opera. Like that's just they love it rather than like,
If you want to come
you
and
know,
have a good time, that's
yeah.
great. I don't care
Because
about
for
the
me, I'm like,
dressing.
I think a lot of the time, I'm like, those people just really like opera. Like, they're not trying to be, going to just be seen. They just, want to go and enjoy themselves. And that's cool. My other thing about this, I will say, is that like, I haven't really been able to, oh, sorry. Yes, this is true. Patty LaPone will like cut your face. Like that is just a fact. Um, uh, I haven't really like weighed in on this at all because it absolutely strikes such terror in my heart that there are such clear videos of people during the theater. Like that terrifies me in a way that I cannot even begin to describe, if only because I am now convinced that all I will be able to think of when I go to things is, oh my God, there's very clear video of me. What if I look like I'm doing something like horrible? Like, what if they're looking at that and I itch my nose and they're like, oh, she's picking her nose. Or, that the first episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, like, this is where I live. Where I'm
Yeah.
like in my heart, like I look at that and I'm like, there's a part of me, I'm like, nope, that strikes terror into my heart. I could be doing, you do an embarrassing thing for like 1 minute and it ends up all over the internet. Um, and I'm not defending her. I'm just saying like that personally absolutely terrifies me.
Yeah. I
It
tend to have
also,
no patience for liars. So generally
yeah,
speaking, and this is a political, both morally don't lie. Tell the truth is the easiest thing to remember, as Ricky Roma said. But also, um, if you're in politics, when you lie, there are people who are happy to prove that you lied. So it's
oh
almost
yeah,
better to just come out, especially I think we live in a world where there's going to be so much video, and her response could have been much different 20 years ago, but
mhm.
now it's like, yes, you're probably on video. It's going to be very clear that you are doing the things you said you didn't do, and so maybe just be like, yeah, I screwed up. People don't apologize enough.
No,
Just
I
say,
agree. I'm just saying,
I
like,
screwed up.
I don't know that we need that clear of a picture of people who are just trying to watch an opera,
Yeah,
or the theater. I don't. I think that that is kind of messed up. But that's
well, that sort of
like, it's bad
became
that she
our
lied. Like, it was
security
like bad
theater.
all around, and so I don't know. I embarrass myself so frequently that it's I almost have trouble I feel like I'm gonna curse myself.
Yeah.
And that's my way. The choker that I'm wearing is in fact a an evil eye because I think I could put the maloika on myself. What do I know? Like at any given time, it's always a possibility.
Yeah.
Like, that is it's true. I live in the Larry David place, so
No,
it struck
you
absolute fear into my heart.
you fortunately do not have me as a father, my poor son. I'm the one who would be sort of, I'm more inclined to be like, the way to avoid embarrassment is to not do stupid things and to always be aware of avoiding. But I understand that I'm pretty harsh. I'm like Batman
What if
training
you were in a
Robin.
Larry David situation where your pants were up and and you didn't know? Like I've had people people do things that they think are embarrassing all of the time.
Yes, and certain
Like
thing, and then
and
if it's a mistake, just apologize. If you pass,
yeah.
yeah, if you did this, just apologize. She did not. She was also very rude to people who are making $15 an hour, sometimes
Yeah.
obviously less, and they asked her to politely leave. They didn't. She flipped them the bird as she was leaving. Um,
Oh, I'm
and
not defending her. I'm just saying the surveillance state thing gives me the creeps. I don't like it, just it does.
yes, is the world that exists now. It is our post 9/11 reality. And if you watch, I was doing a podcast with my friend Leslie Grace Streeter about Law and Order, and one of the things was sort of some of the post 9/11 stuff and how some of that has been, the idea of like, oh, we caught the bad guy because we have the footage, and all this sort of the propaganda has been and created a sense of people want the security state because it allows like, oh, you can bring this up and find the bad guy and find the criminal, and everyone's essentially
Mhm.
um, giving sort of consent to be under surveillance all the time, even though when you were watching if you ever watched the old TV show The Prisoner from the 60s, the concept of constant surveillance is seen as dystopian and is
Yeah.
seen as a nightmare state. Whereas now that's just sort of what we sort of accept. And I think that's, to your point, that's fascinating. I think we sort of start to accept certain things that in the past we viewed as pretty much an infringement of basic rights and privacy and so forth. But um, you know, I think, Lauren Boebert is the person who said that people should take their kids to church and not to drag
Oh yeah,
shows.
no. Like
So
she's a terrible person is the thing. She's a terrible person. What she did was not cool. Um and it's not great that it's bad that she lied, it's bad that she acted like a asshole. I'm just saying the particular idea of like, oh my god, what, like, you're sitting in a theater and that could be like, it's clear and it shows your face and it could be, I don't know, I find it unsettling is all. That's me. I don't,
no, I mean that's certainly true. People are watching you at all times, like the Rockwell song. Sometimes I feel like
yeah.
somebody's watching me. That is the reality now. But yes, I don't know. I was all for her singing along to stuff. Like that's fine. I think that that is it is interesting. Saying the challenge of the theater right now is that there are people who don't go because they feel like there's all this pressure and expectation on them, and there's people who don't go because they're afraid that Lauren Boebert will be there, and that's their nightmare scenario of like someone is going to be loud and annoying, and it's like I'm just going to watch this. If I'm at home, it's much more pleasurable, and I think from an overall standpoint, it's like we're no longer enjoying shared experiences together. But the
Mhm.
ability to do that comes from just being patient. So it's like, okay, this person laughs loud. That's not the end of the world. And I don't need to give them a hassle because they laugh louder than I do. They're enjoying this. Okay, this person is really, I'm being a little rude to someone else. I'm like spreading my legs out. I'm like smoking in front of, maybe I should not do that. It's more of like just treating each other with dignity. But I think we
Well, I
live in
think
a
people
world
have
that no
gotten
one does that.
I mean, like not as far as Bobert, but just in general, I think that people have gotten so used, like accustomed on some level to just like watching shit at home, more so, and like being at home more so than going out and having those shared experiences that they sometimes forget.
Oh yeah.
Like oh, like I when we went to go see the Barbie movie, like my sister and I were like, "Oh my god, this is so weird. We can't talk during the movie."
That's fairly
Like,
true.
and it was just like we had to like it's not that we did, but we were like, "Oh, it's so weird." We forgot what that's like to like not talk during a movie or because it's just you get used to being at home. You get used to like, you know, being different. And I certainly had a lot of trouble like post pandemic being like, "Oh, wait, how do I act when I'm like around human beings now?" I'm not at all saying that that's what she was going through, but I do think that like there's or going there, that was, I don't think that's what was happening with her, but I do think that that has happened with human beings in general in terms of going out post pandemic.
Hmm. I will say, because we've discussed in the past, folks, I really disagree with the folks who are kind of like who try to leverage hypocrisy or say, "Oh, she said this, but she did this," because that doesn't work with Republicans. And also, um, I don't think you know being a drag queen is like being doing something that you then say was the lowest moment of your life, which is what she's going to say, right? Like this is I'm going through. I think she said I'm going through so much, my divorce and whatever. And she's about to become a grandmother, and things are weird. And she was a little eccentric and went to the edge. I think she said in a Newsmax interview. Um, she used eccentric in a very so she's definitely rich now. She's no longer working class.
Well,
She, they use
when
eccentric
you're
to
poor, you're
describe.
crazy. When you're rich, you're eccentric.
Yes, so she's embracing that she's rich now, and she says, "I am eccentric," as opposed to just someone who's around in the It reminds me of the Richard Pryor routine about going like he would go to an adult film and there would be people there showing up. The one guy in the trench coat, but with like fake arms, and like his real hands were like all. It's like, oh my god. So, but yes, that and it was Beetlejuice. Um, but look, that's having lived in New York. That is not the stranger story, you see. So things are in a weird way. Um, whether or not this becomes her Madison Cawthorn thing, um, I am happy to see her lose an election. So if this tip
Oh
either
yeah.
someone is, though actually the problem might be though that she gets challenged successfully primaried, which is good because she's out of the Senate, out of the House, but it would make it harder to beat her in a to win the general election race if you almost have someone normal. So we'll see. I'd be happy to have her no longer in Congress under any means. So
I mean, no, that would be a blessing unto us all. However, as far as you and I were kind of talking about the hypocrisy thing the other day, and it's just kind of very foolish, I think, of some people to assume that the right gives one fuck about hypocrisy because they do not. Like
no,
they don't. There's no like, oh no, this person who is doing everything else that I want isn't espousing family values. What? I am totally turning on them. That is not ever going to happen. Like you know, it's, I get that it's like cathartic for us, I suppose, to point out, people's hypocrisy, but it's, I think, a fool's errand to assume that Republicans are going to be like, oh, I don't know, she got felt up during a television, or sorry, during a Beetlejuice um, musical. I don't know that I can give her my vote, even though she's doing all of the things that I want her to do politically. Um, and I think we sort of need to accept that that does not matter to them. Um, uh, since we have like a little bit of time left, I'm going to veer into a similar thing, which is, the people, the accusations against Russell Brand that came out this weekend. I'm going to get a little bit more into that tomorrow with the thing I'm working on. But you see all these people on the right saying like, oh, they're just doing that because he's a dissident and he didn't like vaccines and he says nice things about Russia. They're trying to silence him because of that. And I find it personally insulting, honestly, that Republicans think that, or conservatives think that at this point, anyone has it in our heads that they're going to turn on someone for being a rapist or being credibly accused of like rape. I don't, like, who thinks that? No, obviously everyone like, my immediate reaction was, oh, let's go see which right-wing zealots are defending this guy, because that's what they do. And I find it, rude of like, stop flattering yourselves, really, people. No one thinks that you are going to, turn on some nut, but just because, four women came out with credible rape accusations against them. Republicans only believe in sexual assault
Mhm.
things when they invent them themselves. Like, that's crazy. Oh no, people coming forward. But no, the people that we invent, like, situations that we invent, like, oh, hey, some Italian people are talking about pizza too much in their emails. Obviously, they're running a satanic sex ring. There are no victims, no one's complaining. But this is what we know is happening because we read the clues, we read their symbols. People are, and that's the kind of uh,
Mhm.
sexual assault accusations that they believe.
Russell Brand also, this all seems, forgive the pun, very on brand for him.
Yeah,
He's not quite um a Bill Cosby person where even if when Cosby is able to avoid prison, reasonable people saying this guy probably raped a lot of people based on the evidence. I believe these allegations have come out. There's so many that makes it very impossible for him to still maintain his status as America's
yeah,
dictator. He's sort of now only has support of the sleazebag contingent, whereas kind of Brand, if he managed to stay out of prison, and for everyone out there afraid because they saw TV shows that tend to and movies that tend to focus more on the cases of false accusations. So they sort of exacerbate the number of false accusations and create a world where a man's life is destroyed. Um, Whereas that's not the reality. To the extent that that might occur, it is far fewer than what media makes it seem. So Brand is not going to lose everything. And it's very hard to be convicted of these charges.
mhm.
He most likely won't. All this does is it will make it. And as you said, the people who love him now will continue to love him. So
Yeah,
and say
he
what
hasn't been doing, it's not like he's been, making movies, going on tour. He's only been interacting with a very specific subset of people who do not have a problem with those kinds of things. And what I will say is, I actually do spend a lot of time looking through wrongful convictions and the narratives behind those, and also like the satanic panic and those narratives. And they're, I am truly not the kind of person who, like, I do not open my mouth unless I feel like I fully understand something, not just because I'm like, oh, it could be, not true, but because I don't want to you know take away credibility. If I say something wrong that's inaccurate, I don't want to take away credibility from like the actual truth, which, you see happening a lot. Like, you'll see people go like, "Oh, you got that one part wrong, therefore the whole thing is discredited." So I like to, take in all the information and then, I'll weigh in. In this particular case, it's it rings very true, like extreme, like it just all of the stories line up. They're all clearly describing the same person. Nothing is, fantastical, which is usually like one of the big hallmarks of things not being true. It's not cinematic. It's not like when you see these narratives of things that turn out to not be true. There's usually, an element of the fantastic. There's an element. There's a Mary Sue element
Hmm.
to a degree. There is, where like these girls aren't like, we were fabulously pure and perfect, and then out of nowhere Russell Brand came in from the shadows, and then he kidnapped us and he put us in microwaves, and like, it's not that. And that's usually, what you see when you see, you know things that are false. There are elements that are there, and it seems out of, it's not just that it seems out of character for someone, but like, things just don't line up logistically, and we feel that. I think when people, when we know the difference between when we are reading fiction, and a lot, not everyone, but if you pay enough attention, you know the difference between like a fictional thing and a real thing a lot of the time. There are just different elements, and these were all so very, like, it was very raw and very disturbing, and they very much rang true. And I feel like the tack that they are trying to take is, that I've seen, that actually is even more disturbing, is like, they're like, well, whether it's true or not, everyone who speaks out against the government or the regime better watch out. Like, no, no,
Yeah,
just the people who rape people.
it's
Like,
conspiracy theories. We see it across the board, right and
yeah,
left. And I was seeing it a lot where there was the art we were discussing that. So there was articles recently about um, Kamala Harris, or or Joe Biden's maybe too old. And someone I was like, someone who otherwise respect online was sort of saying this is all coordinated at this moment. And it's just this idea that people want to believe there's puppet masters. And it's like, no, no, I just think
no
that
one is
people,
getting it together for that. Is what I will
no,
say, because
that's just not how
everything's
it works. It's just
like,
sort of, I find that people who like conspiracies find me very frustrating because I will be like, no, that's a coincidence. Or just there's a pattern, but not a no. So yeah, people are going to start writing more stories about something after it was written. That's sort of how
yeah,
things go. Just like, there was
because
no
that's
sort of
literally how we do our jobs.
superhero movie conspiracy. It was just that a couple did well and others wanted said, oh, I'm gonna go. It's not like some cabal said
Yeah.
we're going to like only do superhero movies now.
People
And
want there to be a cabal so badly, and it's like, it's almost like they want things to be more simplistic.
I just, I don't know. So my final statement on this, I know that it's so weird to me when back in the '90s, again, when if for people who weren't really into politics, but if people who the average person, there was a whole thing about saying it won't be the end of the world if Dole wins versus Clinton. There are people who disagreed, but generally speaking, that was
Mhm.
not a mainstream. Democrats certainly weren't saying that. Certainly, they didn't even say that with McCain. They would say those things. But now, obviously, for good reason, they state this will be the end of the world if Trump wins, if Trump comes back. And yes, it is terrible. So as a result, yeah, people are going to be very nervous about Biden's poll numbers or Harris's poll numbers, and the kind of, you call it the secret thinking, right, or whatever,
Yeah.
people saying don't worry, Robin, it's okay. And you're kind of like, well, I don't want to live in the handsmaid tale, and I'm scared. So I'm just asking the question of like, how do we avoid this? And it's like you get the secret response of don't worry, it'll all work out. And it's like, well, no. So I think,
It's like, well, it's like people are like trying to do like the power of positive thinking, which, I'm a very negative person, so that doesn't work on me very well.
no.
um, I'm Again, that's why I have all my charms. But uh, I think it's fair to get, I think we should be anxious always. Like, whenever people are, too, like, whenever people are too, that's,
Well, Biden beat Trump by like 40,000 votes over 3 states. And his at the time he was polling like it was looked like going to be an old fashioned ass whooping. And like Trump was like at 39% and Biden was at 52 or something in polls. And now it is not that. And we can all ignore polls or whatever. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm just a black person trying to live in the world. And like, it's very hard for me to, I just can't be like, everything's going to be all right. I love that song, but I mean, I can't be that way when there's clear data saying things are not, and
I
where
mean,
Meet
yeah.
the Press is interviewing the guy with 91 felony counts
Mhm.
and just treating him as a perfectly normal.
Yeah. This is just a guy. Let's hear his opinions on the strike.
He's
Really
gonna
useless.
lie.
Um, you know, where I'm worried, quite frankly, and I said I wasn't going to say anything about this publicly because, I don't want to interfere with anyone's like power of positive thinking shit. But where I'm actually worried is like, what if Trump is not the nominee?
Mhm.
Because there are people out there, I am telling you, who will say, oh, well, you know, Trump isn't the nominee. He's not, this, whoever, else it is, isn't like the big threat. Because I'm worried that people are going to say, like, oh, well, I don't want someone who's 80 years old. And so if it's Trump and Biden, both of them are up there. Both of them are, up there in age. Like it's, not, that's not going to be an issue. It is an issue if Trump does not get the nomination. And, it's not, that is pretty nerve wracking. I find it nerve wracking.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Christopher Johnson is the Biden Harris ticket. Age is no issue. Harris underperforms Biden in every poll. And I know people get very upset, and I've been accused of racism and hating Black people because I just acknowledge, like, well, never, it's never been tested. She's never carried these states. I'm not saying dump her for Gretchen Whitmer or Tammy Baldwin or whatever, but the idea is like, if you're saying Tammy Baldwin or Gretchen Whitmer, don't worry. If they have to run, they could flip, they could carry these Rust Belt states and be like, okay, they've done it. I'm very, again, as someone just trying to exist in the world, it is very scary because there's no evidence. And this is someone who never even made it to Iowa, who ran a notoriously chaotic campaign. That's not mean reporting. It was actual reporting about the campaign that Harris won. Those are legitimate concerns. And the response is like, don't have them. Don't have that
Yeah.
concern. Don't worry. Even though Joe
Just be
Biden,
like really like bold enthusiasm and it will like catch like fire and everyone will go along with you. And I don't think that that works. Like I really don't. And, and maybe it's just because, I admit, I do think that everyone generally thinks that people operate the way that they do. And so for me, when I see people being like overly enthusiastic about a thing, that's when my bullshit detector goes off, even like if it's maybe true. Because that's just sort of where, you know,
I guess,
that's where I get suspicious. It is. I admittedly like
well,
I'm not.
yeah, Robin, I've always, the question I've asked, and it's the one, it's like in the mood, like where no one gets very upset if you ask that question. It's like, okay, well, Harris would beat Trump like a drum. Okay, how does Harris outperform Hillary Clinton and these key swing states? How does she do it? And it becomes almost like one of those logic things that blows up the person's head on Star Trek or whatever, because then it's like you can't acknowledge that Clinton made any campaign mistakes or was not a perfect candidate. It was just that people are racist and sexist, but somehow we must have fixed racism and sexism in the past 4 years because Harris would dominate in ways that Clinton didn't. And so I'm just worried again
Like,
because
I
I
mean,
like
why didn't she win the or like come closer in the primaries? Like like I mean that's fine. It's cool to believe that, but like she did not do well in them.
I don't, and
And
like the idea that we're
no.
scarred, older, and wiser. That's me. But I voted for, like, I don't count. I voted for Clinton. I voted for Kerry. I voted for Gore. My parents voted for Dukakis and Mondale. We have a history of standing by some of the very, let's say, losingest Democratic candidates ever. That's it. I was like 10, and it was a sort of, they have it on TV. They had the White House. They had uh, Ronald Reagan's face and Mondale's face. It would get closer and closer to the White House,
Mhm.
and Mondale was just sort of here, and Reagan kept getting closer and closer to the White House. And I remember at the time just sort of thinking, well, he really lost. Like, why are we really into this? Like, my parents are explaining to me why and why Reagan was bad, but it was really like, wow, we're really backing the losers here. But look, I've been doing that. I don't count. It is the folks who have voted for Trump and Bush, who voted for Biden, who we need to make sure we hold. And so that's where I'm scared. Legitimately so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could just pretend that I'm not scared, and we could just, as you say, have lots of enthusiasm, and everything will go all right. And I will email you the address of my house in Canada, Robin. You're welcome. If you
Maybe I
apply,
have dual citizenship. I can live anywhere in the Schengen area.
if you promise to do at least 1 week of a great Italian dinner, I'll make sure you get one of the spare bedrooms with this ensuite bath. If you will cook for me. But other than that, that is, you will always. But no matter what, you don't have to cook for me. You'll still be welcome in that horrible future. Uh,
Yeah, no, I just like I understand wanting to be optimistic. I worry about, wait, where was Michael's comment there? Because I'm like, yes, that is specifically what I am anxious about is that it the 2016 thing, like people were all the like way the hell too confident about like, oh, no problem, Hillary Clinton will beat Trump, no problem. I was like one of like, there were like four people saying I actually don't think that this will happen, and I was one of them. And I tried really hard to be like as enthusiastic as I could. um, Regardless of how people thought that those of us who supported Sanders were, I was good. I wrote all kinds of nice things. Um, I But I did not think that it was like, oh, well, this is just going to be easy. Oh, I hope Trump is the nominee because he'll be so easy to beat. I don't think so. And I actually, where I get worried is that the kind of people who are very confident about these things are also the kind of people who don't like really have a good, like, they don't really draw a good beat on other human beings. Like, they're
mhm.
not really like, I understand how people are.
Yeah,
It's very like it's a lot of these like beltway um commentators who, don't actually like interact much with regular human beings and are therefore sort of projecting their own feelings onto the
yeah.
populace at large. And so I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying like I'm not I can't place my trust in anything
Now,
in that way.
I will wrap this up with this one thing. I won't name the theater. There's one theater I was involved with, and there was concern about the subscriptions were decreasing and attendance was decreasing, and I would be like, oh, people would have ideas why. They're very confident about ideas that, of course, bolster their own idea of what they wanted to do and what they wanted to program and everything. And I would just be like, well, can't you just ask the people who were subscribers and didn't come back for the season, or who did? Let's just ask them. And then it would just do everything. Oh yeah, we should totally ask. But I think, like, and it kept trying to avoid just like engaging the public. Like, just ask them
Yeah.
before. You could be right. We could need to do this or more of this or less of that, but maybe you should just actually listen to those people. And I think often it becomes because you don't want to hear. You're afraid that they will tell you something that you don't want to hear.
Mhm.
And so you come up with your own conclusions. And I feel like that is, scary to me. So, Well, we've already got our sneak preview of what Robin will be working on tomorrow. So some Russell Brand and um, some other stuff, and I've got some Mitt Romney because people are convinced that only Democrats said anything mean about Mitt Romney in 2012, when actually everything that the Democrats are not actually creating. Most of it was starting in January. Republicans were actively calling him a mealy mouth moderate and a, corporate raider who didn't care about people. So that narrative was already starting. But it's part of the idea that everything bad that happens, that every bad choice that Republicans make is because of Democrats. So we were mean to Mitt Romney. And so Trump was our punishment for being mean to him.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so well, thank you everyone for we went over a bit, but we were just kind of nervous about losing our constitutional rights and everything. So uh I mean, Mike Pence is talking about a national abortion ban. Like, they're not hiding from it. They're
Yeah.
not, these ain't Democrats. They ain't hiding for what they're gonna do. So um we will be back next time. Please like, share, subscribe. Um Follow Robin on Twitter for fashion advice as always. And the great Sarah has each week. I love her advice column each week. We should have her on
Yes,
to
no,
do advice
she said that
review.
she'll do she's actually a dear friend of mine, so I'm so happy that she's back. And she's actually coming to Chicago next week, and we're gonna hang. It's gonna be awesome. I think Jamie is actually gonna be here at the same time. So, like party in the Windy City. We
But yes,
never actually call it that. Why did I do that? Ugh.
please read her stuff on the weekends, especially her advice column is great and worth reading. And thank you, everyone.
And read all of Steven's things also. All
Take care,
right.
everyone.
Love you guys.